Okay.
All right, good morning. It's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the Tuesday, December 10th, 2024 meeting of the Tucson-Pima County Joint Code Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Rick Bright,
Here.
Dennis Kuhn,
Here.
Fred Knapp,
Here.
Jeff Hamstra,
Here.
Ken Cawthorn,
Here.
Thomas Hayes,
Here.
Dave Gibbons.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes, which is something new, so. We can have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
State your name, please.
Hamstra.
Second,
I second. Dave Gibbons.
any comments, corrections?
We have a motion by Jeff Hamstra, seconded by Dave Gibbons, to accept the legal action report from Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 into meeting minutes.
All those in favor, respond by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, say nay.
Motion passes unanimously.
Like you're at 7-0 area, you're pretty good. Okay. We'll go on to item 8 next. No. 3. Agreed. Continued discussion of the International Building Code. I guess the staff had anything they want to add?
Yeah, hello, guys, welcome, good morning, this is Dan. After last week's discussion, we made a couple changes to, it was 1609.6.11. Dave had recommended a couple suggestions for, section 2.1. And, see, it was 2.2.1 and 2.2.2. Before we got rid of the brand name hanger and just put a pound, minimum pound limit on the purlin anchors and the connections from a truss to Broadway. And then the other thing was on, I forgot which section it was. For the vapor barrier, we added may require a letter from registrant, I think was how we ordered it.
Is that on the building code or the residential
It
code?
was on both.
What's that? On both.
I don't remember where,
1907.
1907, thanks.
So that's new on the building code then.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, there it is. Required letter from Arizona licensed registrant. We just kept them both the same, IRC and IBC.
Okay, because the model code does not require that letter of certification, correct? And the IBC.
IB says, I'd have to look, based, subject to building officials' approval, I think is how it was worded.
If I recall, it was, in the building code, it was silent on vapor barriers and it was required in the residential.
No, there's, actually, there's 4 exceptions in the, building code. For detached structures, accessories to occupancies in group R3, such as garages, utility buildings, or other unheated facilities. Number 2 is for unheated storage rooms having an area of less than 70 square feet and carports attached to occupancies in group R3. Number 3 is for buildings or other occupancies where Migration of moisture through the slab from below will not be detrimental to the intended occupancy of the building. 4 is for driveways, walks, patios, and other flat work that will not be enclosed at a later date. 5, where approved based on local site conditions. And I think that was number 5, where we just added may require a letter from the registrant. Oh, no, it says requires a letter from the Arizona license registrant. Yeah,
The amendment does.
the amendment does, yes, yes. That was just added to the end of, exception 5.
Okay, so currently, a commercial building using International Building Code, you can submit a plans without a vapor barrier. With this amendment, you'd have to write an addition. Anything under the IBC, do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, that's what it means.
Guess my question is, if we got a set of plans stamped by a restaurant, why do we need the letter?
Well, I would say if it was stamped by a registrant, you probably wouldn't need the letter. Might want to think about how to reword that one.
Yeah, because under the IBC, everything has to be sealed. But under the IRC, that's not a requirement.
But you're proposing that it will be a requirement?
No, I was just, essentially what I was doing, Tom, was, just for consistency, after talking with Clayton, we thought it might be good to put it in both the IRC and IBC since.
Just trying to do parallel language there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why is the requirement in parentheses instead of just an added sentence? Does that affect the value of it?
No, I don't think so, Dennis. It was just, the way I put it in there. And obviously, because, they are sealed registrants, maybe, or plans, maybe we don't even need it in this case.
Trying to think, is there anything under the IBC that could be done by not registered?
Probably not. I'm drawing a blank on that too.
Well, what if it's mechanical only? Just, and there's some sort of.
Still have to register, still have to seal it.
Yeah, well, are you gonna seal that? Say you're not tear it down. Required.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Under
we're
your
not-
mechanical pad? Design registrant.
Maybe they have to bust the floor open
Yeah.
to do something and then put the floor back.
Right, right.
Then, and there wasn't one to begin with, now you have to put one under the patch.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, it doesn't make sense just to do it under part of the floor.
It wouldn't, but would that be required if there were?
Yeah.
So would you have a rule like if you had to remove 25% of the concrete floor, you had to remove it all with the paper barrier?
I don't,
50%?
No.
No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
No, all we do now, this is correct, all we do now is we submit an RFI back to the architect saying, we cut out for, say, the new bathroom layouts or and everything, there's no vapor barrier underneath it right now. So we're not putting vapor barrier back in unless you want a topical vapor barrier on the whole thing. But it's up to the architect and the owner to approve or disapprove that.
I guess my point is if there's no amendment and that condition were to happen, and is that considered a new slab? Or is it just a patch? And if it's a new slab, even though it's not an entire slab, would the code as written require a vapor barrier? Could it be interpreted, could it be enforced that way?
Well, I don't know what you gain by putting a vapor barrier under a portion of the slab.
You don't get anything.
It's
All you're
not
doing
what
is
you
pushing
gain,
the
it's
water
rather
to
something-
the.
It's not to the other part.
Slab.
Exactly.
You don't gain anything, follow path least resistance. So you basically, it's either, do you want it, it just depends on the site conditions, and that's why I think the architect has to approve it or disapprove it, but I mean, not that it's a code thing, I mean, it's just a personal preference, whether or not they wanna take that chance. They may have owned this building for 8 or 10 years and not had one issue with delamination on carpet or ECT, and they're fine with just patching, in kind. If you're redoing bathrooms or something.
Yeah, I can't see the point of doing a partial.
No.
Paper.
I don't know. Never.
Yeah, I think the intent is a whole slab.
Ground up building,
Yeah.
not for a tenant improvement. I guess it goes back to my original question, if we got a sealed set of plans, do we need a letter in addition to that?
Yeah.
Well, Juan can speak for Clayton, but I would say probably not, because the registrant in theory would
Right.
be taking that into consideration, or what?
Well, the only reason to do it, I can think of, if you wanted to red flag it, to make sure specifically the architect addressed that, or the engineer. Is it a big enough issue that you need to red flag it, require an additional letter?
I think from our perspective, just a notation on the plan set that is sealed would suffice.
Sealed,
Yes.
so you are requiring a paper barrier?
No, if the architect,
Takes exception.
Sealed as in,
Yeah,
sorry, sealed. Or where the site conditions or the registrant deemed it not necessary, a notation on the plan set that they seal would suffice, rather than requiring a separate letter.
okay,
it'd just be a general note in the concrete notes or something, if it's in the concrete notes and says where the concrete's gonna be exposed, like round and sealed, doesn't need to require a paper barrier, if it states that, and the architect stamps it, that's sufficient.
Yes.
I mean, that works for us too.
So my concern would be in residential structures that aren't requiring a registrant. It seems to be putting an undue burden on people that want to build a home.
Well. There again, let me look and see how the IRC, how it's worded in the IRC.
With the option to be able to do a topical barrier if you really were in a situation where there was high
Well,
moisture.
but that would meet the intent, I think. The
Right.
topical barrier is a method of sealing.
so would you require an appeal for the topical barrier?
Let me look and see how that was worded in. Let me look at the IRC and see how it's worded in the IRC.
Well, part of the problem is the residential is getting so complicated.
Yes.
To do it yourself, it's such a daunting task for a non-registrant. Almost to the point where you're required to have a registrant.
That's the intent of the building code, is to allow
No, it's
the
not.
average person to build a home.
I guess my point is you make it more and more complicated, what's the tipping point where you're gonna have to require a registrant? Make sure all the code requirements are met.
Yeah, I mean, you get to the point where you have to do a code analysis.
And what registrant would you use? Would it be a hydrologist or engineer?
Well, any registrant,
Would be
architect,
qualified?
engineer,
They would be qualified to say that.
well, under state statute, any registrant can pretty much do anything as long as they feel they're qualified.
They're stamping the drawings,
Right.
taking that liability.
Yeah. So I mean, most registrants don't cross over unless it's pretty minor, but, right.
So the IRC only has 4 exceptions, but the 4th exception is where approved by the building official based on local site conditions.
My question to that requirement is how does the building official make that evaluation based on a set of plans?
Yeah, it just.
Was the reason for a registrant's letter. was the thought, and I thought that's what we had talked about during the last meeting,
On residential.
on residential, not necessarily commercial. Commercial was something Clayton and I had talked about at a later date, just for consistency, but after thinking about and discussing it here, we don't need a letter for the IBC structure.
Yeah, you stand the parallel language,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But if a residential plan set was already, you know, the entire set prepared by a registrant, why would you need the letter in that place? It puts it on par.
In that
It puts it
case,
on par with
but see,
commercial.
that's where it says we're approved by the building official. In that case, we could just approve it. That was the amendment.
But if you actually put in the amendment that they have to write the letter, then they have to write the letter.
Well,
Well, no, this one says may require a letter. May,
right.
not does. And I may have just typed that wrong in RBC. It's up to the building official to make that, it would be up to the building official to make that determination if he wanted a letter from a licensed register.
Well, let me give you this scenario. So somebody does a set of house plans, they don't use a registrant, and they want to eliminate the paper barrier. What registrant do you accept to write the letter?
Right.
Because an architect can do, in theory, they can do mechanical, electrical, plumbing as part of the project, but they can't go in and do just electrical or just. So it wouldn't be an architect, wouldn't be a structural engineer,
Geotech, probably.
you'd require a geotech.
Require a geotech that did an analysis of the site conditions and soils.
Which goes back to our potential builder again.
No, I understand all that.
It almost seems like the commercial code is more lenient than the residential.
Well,
I think the reason for that is.
In the sense that it has that word may require.
So I would say the commercial is less requirements because you're required to have a register. So you have someone that's legally liable for making those decisions. You don't always have that on the residential.
I'm not seeing the word may,
It's just in the,
I'm saying required.
that's in the IBC. If you look at section 506.3.3 in the IRCs where it says may.
The current amendment on the website says where designed by a qualifying registered design professional. That language seems to have been
Is
modified.
that in the IPC?
No, IRC, these are the IRC,
Okay.
Where's that at, Dave?
on the IRC amendments that are linked from the code committee website.
What's the city say? Okay, yeah, so Clayton wrote his different than I wrote mine, so. City says we're determined by a qualified registrant to design professional based on soil conditions, floor finishes, such as exposed concrete surfaces. So Clayton expounded on what I did.
Well, if you're doing your own house and don't have a restaurant, you have to get this letter. We're talking several $1,000, letter from.
If you don't wanna put in a paper barrier. So it does give you that out. They can put in a paper barrier, avoid the registry.
Well, concrete thing.
Right.
Because he doesn't want the callback
Okay.
for crack slabs and curl slabs.
Well, you could go down to maybe where you ask for what the floor finishes will be on the slab.
Well, play the devil's advocate, you don't know, then 20 years from now that they may put it.
No.
That's the problem.
You know, but if what I understand with what Fred was saying, last time in those scenarios, typically they do a moisture test on the slab before they
Yeah.
put
Yeah,
down.
you can always do a moisture test on the slab before they apply for it. to make sure that it's less than like 8 pounds of hydrostatic pressure coming up to the floor. Or they won't install it without a toppable vapor barrier. Because they can't guarantee it. The floor covering guys can't guarantee it. Because of the new glues, the VOCs, well, VOC
They're all
glues,
water-based,
they're
yeah.
just not adhesive anymore, so.
Yeah, what time of the year do you take that moisture?
Whenever you're gonna put
Say-
floor covering. I mean, you condition the space, you're conditioning the space.
Right,
It could be the winter, it could be the summer, it could be monsoons, you're conditioning the space. And then you take your test for 24 hours. Put that on the floor, and if it exceeds the manufacturer's recommendation of installation, they don't do it without putting in a topical barrier, which costs about $6 a square.
I guess my question is, and I have no data on this, does that moisture content stay the same?
Oh, I wouldn't think so. There's so many variables.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's not, nothing is, this is building. There's no exact science.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really a judgment call.
Yeah, it's a judgment call. And we always fight back because we have to warranty the work. So we
Okay.
fight that, and we just say, as per our experience, when we're exposed to concrete, we don't want to put vapor barrier. But we do put vapor barrier underneath with the new concrete when we're gonna put floor covering down. For sure.
So we're gonna take the register stamp on a commercial project and require a letter on the residential projects if they want to eliminate the vapor barrier.
Yeah, I'm just saying if, essentially, what, let me see who's doing one, thanks. Yeah, so Clayton, he deleted exceptions for, he got rid of, where approved by the building official based on local site conditions, and he put where designed by a qualified registered design professional based on soil conditions, floor finishes such as exposed concrete.
Well, I agree with that, because you guys don't always get the complete picture when someone submits a project to you.
Yeah,
So you gotta really know good basis to make that judgment call. Okay, so if we have a letter for residential on a restaurant, single family, you're gonna have to choose between putting in the vapor barrier or getting a letter. So put the vapor barrier in, there's more work in curing the concrete. A lot more work,
It is.
a lot more work.
They're not going home early.
No, because you know, you gotta do a lot of extra stuff if you're gonna put a vapor barrier in this climate. Slab's gonna crawl, crack, probably gonna curl and crack anyway, but to mitigate it.
And you can go down that rabbit trail too, because, architects, design professionals require us to certify the vapor barrier by the manufacturer. So we have to bring a manufacturer's rep out to certify the installation. There's a lot of times we have to, bring that up in the walls and seal corners and.
Right. Well. And who knows how many holes get punched, right? Around plumbing.
you gotta walk on it.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
All the adobes, they punch right through it.
well, that's a problem. If you got a vapor barrier, you got a bunch of little holes, that's where the moisture comes up.
And they have to question, well, paper barrier, PAV. And then they have compaction issues sometimes with PAV on the paper barrier.
Right,
And it doesn't mechanically bond to the substrate, to the substrate either. I mean, it's. This, you can just go around in circles on this discussion. I mean, I just put on my, spend on it.
well, I think all you can do is the register contractor is called by the national standards, which I did send. the
Yeah,
data.
you can say that.
It says if you got this, do this, if you got this, do this.
Yeah.
And then if it goes bad, you come along and follow the national
Yeah.
standard. And that's about all you can do, I guess. Okay. So we're eliminating the letter for commercial, we're keeping the letter for residential.
Right, so do we want to use Clayton's, the wording Clayton put in his amendment on that?
I like his Clayton's wording, because it's more substantial.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. It gives you clear direction.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So with that verbiage, you're gonna end up with a geotech guy. That's the rest of it.
He said delete, I wasn't deleting exception for, I was just adding to it. Clayton's deleting, and if I look at Clayton, looks like he's saying it's gonna be required if you want to favor.
On residential.
On residential.
Yes. I would agree with that. You don't like it, but what are you gonna do? Okay, are there any other amendments we need to discuss on the building code?
The only other one was, the section 1609. With the changes we had, which I think the good changes, they were vetted by staff, which included conversations with Dave and Brent Woods on those,
On the structural.
on the structural, essentially, saying, purlin anchor capable of, holding 800 pounds, and then 500 pounds for, the clip, for the connector. So if you guys are fine with that, we can go with those.
Okay. Any comments on the building code, ABC? We have a motion to accept these final changes to the IBC.
So moved.
Right now, moved. Second. I realize that's the building. Okay. All in favor, say yes or aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay. Passes 7-0. So that's one under the bridge. Now we come to item 4, International Mechanical Code.
Sure.
We can turn it up again.
All right,
It says nightmare.
this is my nightmare. All right, just to get everybody up to speed a little bit, ASHRAE 15 recently updated and issued a new new edition. And I just wanted to read this to let you know how challenging this has been. The republication of ASHRAE 15 comes 1 year early to better align with the standards 15, 15.2, and 34 with the model code revision cycle by publishing in 2024. So that's what we have now is the 2024 ASHRAE 15, which incorporates all of the previous amendments. By republishing the 24 ASHRAE 15 standard can be submitted in public comment to the ICC and IAPMO model codes. This one-time exception establishes a new 3-year cycle for the republication moving forward. The 2024 edition of the Standard 15 incorporates 19 published addenda, the most addenda per year in standard history. Most addenda, the 2022 edition addressed some of the aspects of flammable refrigerant use, which was caused by that. So anyways, they did come up with the new addendum, a new edition of the ASHRAE 15. So it makes it a lot easier to go through because before we were going back and forth between addendas and they never consolidated it. Anyway, so then I was trying to incorporate that into chapter 11 of the IMC, which is refrigeration. And the problem is so many changes that I would have to rewrite most of chapter 11. So my thought is I could just take the first sentence, the very first section in chapter 11, which is 1101.1. And at the end of that sentence just says, this chapter shall govern the design, installation, construction, and repair of refrigeration system, permanently installed refrigerant storage systems and other components shall be considered as part of a refrigeration system to which they are attached. I just wanted to add a sentence that said, the refrigeration systems shall meet the requirements of this chapter or ANSI ASHRAE 15, 2024 with the companion standard at ANSI ASHRAE 34, 2024. So that's, I keep thinking that's the simplest way. Otherwise, I'm rewriting most of this thing. And the problem is there's tables in here that we'd have to somehow get them into the ASHRAE, because it's confusing in that just to let you know how confusing this is, so they have this ASHRAE 34, which lists all the refrigerants and gives their, basically gives their, data on them as far as the, let me just find, get to it here. Gives you what is typically called the RCL, which is the, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot here, which is the refrigerant concentration limit. And so for the most part, buildings are required to have, they limit the amount of refrigerant based on that RCL value. However, for A2Ls, they decided that that wasn't going to work because we just weren't going to be able to use A2Ls otherwise, because their RCL number was so much lower than typical values. So then they said, okay, so for A2Ls, we're going to allow you to use the LFL, which is the lower flammability limit, and use that value rather than the RCL value. So, and why, I don't know why, other than they're just trying to provide some relief in allowing you to use the refrigerant and realizing that there's only so much of the refrigerant. It's not like an unlimited supply. So that's all I can gather from that. But to rewrite chapter 11 to say use RCL for all refrigerants except A2Ls, and then that calculation for the lower flammability limit, or the LFL, only comes into play if there's a refrigerant detector that then will turn the fan on to circulate the air to kind of mix the refrigerant into the volume of the room so it's not concentrated. If it's not, then they go through these other calculations and procedures to limit the amount of refrigerant. So it just got really confusing. So that's why I'm thinking we just add the note to say, the refrigerant system shall meet the requirements of this chapter or ASHRAE 15, 2024 with the companion standard ASHRAE 34. So that's kind of what I'm hunting and suggesting, because it's just too much, I think, effort to rewrite chapter 11 to be able to, because chapter 11 doesn't even discuss the lower flammability limits and that are now being accepted for A2L refrigerants as far as your calculation procedure. So that's my proposed per chapter, and that would eliminate any other amendments that we were talking about in chapter 11. Just reference somebody to ASHRAE 15. ASHRAE 15 and ASHRAE 34. Yeah. So I could send you, but Benny, that's how I was gonna suggest saying it. And I could send a quick email describing that to both of you so that
That'd be great.
the wording for it, but it's just, that's all I could think of what to do for that.
I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah, because it's just too many other. Yeah. I started writing it out, and I got pages and pages, and then, this section, I need to refer to it, and I need to create another section, and no, it's not gonna happen. And so I think it's just easier that way.
Definitely sounds much less confusing than it is.
Right, and you know, ASHRAE 15 is now like the ICC, they could view it online. They do make you give them your email address, but it's still available so people can look at it. And they don't need to purchase it.
Okay. That's same for 15 and 34.
15 and 34, yeah. All of ASHRAE standards can now be viewed online. So,
Well, can the current amendments do basically say that, except they reference ASHRAE standard 15/2022?
right,
So you just need a
yeah, So
update
I
on
was
the
just
current
gonna-
amendment to the current.
correct. And I just wanted to point it out a little more. I mean, there's always the the alternative method, which is in all the codes that we can use, alternative methods, but I just want to point it out more so because trying to go by ASHRAE, trying to go by IMC, chapter 11 is going to be challenging for a lot of installations. And so that's why I think we need to point it out in just the first paragraph that, yeah, if it's too challenging, go to ASHRAE. Which is weird. So for the first time, we're saying go to this ASHRAE standard as a relief because the code is too stringent, so. Anyways,
Yeah, the problem is the federal requirement is rushing this process.
right,
Because our codes are on a 3-year cycle, so the next code cycle, mechanical code, will probably incorporate all this stuff, but.
yeah, it
When
will,
this comes out in 24 and the IMC comes out in 24. You don't have time to coordinate it to the code.
right. And that's, I think, the whole reason, I mean, as you saw, I mean, that's why they jumped the code, the standard cycle and everything else, because it's so different. So anyways. That's what,
So any discussion on that point? See a few nodding heads.
Yeah.
Couple blank stares.
I think adding that verbiage is very wise.
So no word on if they're gonna extend the January deadline.
We're only 2.5 weeks away.
Yeah.
You got a day or two, yeah.
right. and-
I can't even get units yet.
Right, and the problem is that they were supposed to, they're not gonna extend the packaged and splits. Those are moving forward too fast, chillers and all the rest. They were supposed to extend it for the VRF equipment. But that information hasn't been provided yet, so far it's just hearsay. Yeah, so I don't know what's gonna happen with VRF.
So that's really our only issue with the mechanical point of this.
Yeah, it was just chapter 11.
Chapter 11.
Yep.
Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion to accept Ken Cawthorn's suggestion?
So moved, Jeff Hamstra.
Second on that?
I'll second it, Dennis.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say no. Passes unanimously. So we can move on to the next item, item 5, which is the 2024 International Residential. Care to comment on anything? We have discussed this several times past meeting. I think the only outstanding issue were structural issues. So I think, Dave Gibbons has addressed.
Language has been updated, descriptive upward. It's all generic, kind of references to clips or graphs. Just has the vapor retarder, like, an alternate for a registrant provided.
Okay. So we've specified some connectors, and then we're gonna require the letter to eliminate the vapor barrier on single family. So that would apply to anything under the IRC. So a duplex would require a required, but a triplex may not.
That is correct.
Right.
This like.
Okay.
Townhomes would be included.
Would be included. And under, if you do it under the IRC.
If you do it under, yes. Do it under the IRC.
Okay. So I suppose if you did townhomes with a restaurant, you wouldn't require a letter.
No, because then you're doing it for the IBC.
So you can do it under the IRC as a
Well,
restaurant.
still a registrant involved.
Right. So anything in the IRC will require some kind of restaurant to say it's okay to eliminate the big repair.
Essentially, that's what we're saying.
Right. So any other comments on the residential code and the amendments? Chance. No comments? Can we have a motion to accept the latest amendments to the IRC?
I move to accept the amendments to the 2024 IRC.
Okay, we have a motion by Dave. Anybody second?
I'll second Jeff Hamstra.
We have a second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no.
No.
Okay. Passes 6-1. I love it when someone doesn't go along with it. That means they're thinking.
Wait till we get to the next section.
Oh, now we're on to item 6. 2024 International Energy Conservation Code. We're gonna follow Ken and Dennis since they are
Sure.
more heavily impacted than anybody.
I'll go ahead and start. First, I'd like to, the sections that I have a real issues with, or would rather punt, is section, on the energy code is this whole section 406, which is the section, additional efficiency, renewable and load management requirements. It is so difficult. It's challenging. It's written very challengingly. I could not figure out how to get a building to pass. I have, Dennis and I talked for a bit. I've gone through different buildings that we have and tried to get them to pass, and I couldn't. I have talked with Quest Energy, who does a lot of our energy modeling. They also have problems with it, and Clayton, they're also on the, what's that, Recce, thank you, the Recce committee. And they said they are reaching out to other jurisdictions because they're seeing all jurisdictions are having trouble with, especially that section, the C407 or C406, and also C407 and C408. All this section's about these additional, not 408, I'm sorry, C409, which is the calculations for HVAC total system performance ratio. It just goes on and on. And so, I mean, at this point, if we had to do something, you really can't take out, ideally, I'd say we remove section 406. In doing so, we would have to then get with ComCheck and have them make a special ComCheck for our jurisdiction, which could be done. The other one we could do is go back to ICC, say this is not acceptable, and we could go to the 2021 IECC, which is acceptable. I've kind of gone through it. I haven't gone through it thoroughly, but it's way better than what I'm finding in this. I mean, you literally have in section 406, I think, over 30 pages of what's required for these additional energy efficiency requirements, which is gonna require people to put things in that typically aren't necessary into their building. And even if you have photovoltaics for your building, they're limiting you on the amount of credit they'll give you for that, because you can put enough photovoltaics in that you're completely off grid, but they're gonna limit the amount of credit you get that you can apply to that. So you still have to do a bunch of extra stuff, which is go to R52 for roof insulation, go to, an extra R5 on continuous for wall insulation, or go to mechanical systems that you might not need. For instance, they want dedicated outside air systems, which a typical office building, we don't need it. Why would we provide it? You get extra points for heat pump water heaters, which I know there's a move to do that, but it's only, the amount of points you're getting is only a couple of points. I need to get to 65 points.
Yeah, that's the point. 65 points on a B
B
occupancy in our climate zone. And so then you look in the table of how you get points.
Right.
Where do you get your points? And, you don't get many. Reduced air leakage, 2 points. Add roof insulation, only 2 points. Add wall insulation, 4 points. Improve fenestration, you can get 7 points. There are so many items that just have very small point numbers. HVAC performance up to 17 points, but what do you have to do to get that?
So that requires an energy model of just the HVAC system. So then we'd have to do an energy model, and then that is prorated depending on how efficient the HVAC system is. So it's a maximum of 17 points.
Yeah, you may not get them.
So you likely won't get it. You'll get a portion of that. And then even if, like I said, so you're at 6, you're trying for 65, but even if you do all this solar, it only gives you like 15 points or something.
Yeah, you don't get very many points because the renewable energy can only be a certain percentage of the points.
Correct.
So I'm looking through it and I'm wondering how can any building comply even if you try to do all these things?
And that's what we were running into. And so then I thought, well, it looks like we're just gonna have to do energy models and go to, which avoids section 406, I thought. And we could then go to section 407, which is simulated building performance. But that then still refers you to, in your simulation, you still have to show credits in section 406 to be able to and document that those are a certain percentage of your better energy efficiency. And then what I was talking with Quest Energy, who was researching this also, and he says, yeah, and he doesn't even see how it required about 30% better efficiency just to get, because of these additional performance items, which is just, he said it's almost impossible to get. So I'm not sure how to deal with the 2024 code yet. And I was trying to reach out to some of the folks in Phoenix, but and so the contact I have for Quest Energy, he said he has been reaching out to Phoenix and Scottsdale and all the jurisdictions up there to try to figure out what's going on. I was gonna ask, because you're a part of that group too, Clayton, I was gonna ask if you could reach out to them, but I look at just as section 406 and is just ridiculously hard. And it also requires, to comply with 406, you have to have somebody in charge of, you have to basically have a professional in charge of the entire building. So that professional then has to then organize all of these extra credits into one document. And then somehow you guys have to review this stuff, And I just looked at it as, it basically is lead, it's almost identical to what lead was, but lead was a voluntary thing. That if somebody wanted to pay extra money to get whatever credits or tax credits or whatever benefits they get from that, that was voluntary. This is mandatory, this is code minimum. So now you have to be, I mean, it just to me looked to be ridiculous, and I just didn't know how to get buildings to even pass. And maybe I'm looking, I mean, maybe I'm uneducated with it, it's a new code, new system, it's totally different from what the previous ones were, and so maybe it's just, I'm unfamiliar with it, and there's a section in there that I'm missing that locks, that says, oh, it's easy, you just do this X, Y, and Z. But I haven't found that so far.
But you put me, I'm in the same place you are. I don't see the path to get through it. And we also have to realize this is additional on top of other things they've already changed into basic requirements. And I mean, I can look at the electrical side. They've required that they're now adding requirements that we have to use dimming controls on lighting in 11 different types of spaces. Where previously dimming was not required. So that's, you know, additional equipment to do that. Any project, and this is offices, conference rooms, a lot of different types of, even lobbies and buildings have to have dimming control.
And then that's just the base.
Yeah, that's the base. We've got to do that without this additional. And then they're adding more requirements, basic requirements to have motion sensing and dimming on exterior light fixtures. They've reduced the lighting power densities. Not a whole lot, though, I will say that. And I don't see that as being a difficulty, but it is a reduction compared to the 2018 that we're at. They've added a requirement for automatic receptacle control. So now receptacle outlets, you have to have a certain number of switched receptacle outlets that are automatically controlled either by the occupancy sensing or a time-based control system. And mostly that's going into office and classroom type use areas, but it's you have to put those in. It's also going to require energy monitoring for buildings that are 10,000 square foot and bigger, and there are 7 different categories. So you have to put in equipment that monitors or meters energy usage by category, like lighting, HVAC equipment, and broken down into 7 different categories. And so to do that, I mean, that requires a significant amount of extra hardware to go into the building, possibly a completely different electrical design to segregate electric panels into lighting panel and a receptacle panel and a process equipment, HVAC, water heating has to be separate from HVAC, et cetera, et cetera. So all these things are adding significant costs to the systems. And the energy monitoring system, you know, my question is, who's going to read the meters and what are they going to do with it? You know, there's a lot of mom and pop businesses that are in a 10,000 square foot building that, you know, don't really have a facilities manager or someone that's looking after the thing. So they got to buy all this equipment and put in, and it's just going to be there. But that's what the code's requiring. And I'm reading C 405.15.1 as requiring renewable energy to be put into every building. And that's either done by, you have to do a renewable energy system like a solar power system on the building, or you have to essentially buy credits for a system that's off-site. So that's every building. So, you know, going to 2024 is definitely making a difference in energy savings, even without all this additional. Right. But you put it all together, I mean, you're talking major cost increases every single new project that gets built, and a lot of this would apply to major renovations as well.
Yeah. So to summarize at this point, I can't recommend accepting the 2024 IECC. Unless we make major changes to it, which would mean that we at least eliminate section 406 entirely, or change it. Change it so the point system makes sense. Because right now, the point system, I don't know how to get a typical building to pass. Whereas the 2021 point system was you had to get 10 points, and it was pretty minor points pretty easy to get there with, probably a couple of mechanical or electrical things, which we're pretty much doing anyways. So it was pretty easy. It was fine. But this was, even if you go extreme, I don't know how to get it to pass. So it's just, and it's very hard to read through. It's not written very easily, so it just makes it very challenging. So I don't know where we go from here, other than, do we see what other jurisdictions are doing? Do we start pursuing the 2021?
Did I hear that you want to? I was on the residential committee, not the commercial committee. I agree that the additional efficiency sections are more complicated. This has been operating in Washington State for a while, and in the Northwest. So I'll reach out to Greg to give him some contacts, Greg at Quest
Yeah.
Energy. But it is complex. So are you suggesting to take the 21 C406 and put that language into the 24 C406?
Or just accept the 21? So so the most of the efficiencies that are listed in C405 or 405, I think, is lighting. So 404, the mechanical efficiencies and all, most of that hasn't changed. They just added more because there's been more development of equipment, more VRF and things like that. So they've added more of those equipments. But I'm not sure how to deal with this section 406 other than just either scratch it out completely. But then how do we get ComCheck? Because the building folks are gonna want something that just says pass, right? A green yes. So we either then have to get ComCheck to make a specific one for our jurisdiction, which I think they'll do.
I don't think they'll do it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll change. They used to, but I
Right.
don't think they'll change anything that they perceive as reducing the efficiency
Right.
of the code. So I don't think that's on.
We could engage them. I
We can
obviously
engage
can't
them and
speak for
see
them.
what- I don't know what though. I've just heard that.
And that's why I'm thinking it might be simpler just to say, let's just adopt the 2021 and punt on the 24 for now, because I just don't know how to accept it yet.
On the residential side, on the 21, there's higher, I don't know, we're in climate zone 2. And say there's higher insulation requirements
There was
in.
on the R and the,
Yes.
on the R.
And they
R
came
section.
down.
And
in
they
the
came back
24
down in
and came back
24.
down to the 2018.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the only difference. That's the only difference,
That's
right?
an issue that home builders have had, that they like on the 24,
Right.
that those insulation values came back to the 2018.
And it could be that we just make an amendment to keep it where, because it was the 2018 was the same as the 2024, but on those values, but 2021, for some reason, on just the residential section went up. Now, a lot of the residential sections, you could just say, no, we're just gonna use the commercial section and not use the residential, because you could go either direction on some of those. So, and that would be acceptable too. It's just say, we're just gonna use the commercial section instead of the residential. So I've seen that. So it's just, like I said, I just saw this point system and for every occupancy type, just realize, you know, it is, for every occupancy type, it's an entire page of just the points. That you can get. And there's, you know, probably 10 different occupancy types. So you got 10 pages of just the different point systems you need. And then you got another page that tells you how many points you need. And then another page that tells you how many deductive points you can be limited to based on solar and renewable, well, what is it? And load management. So credits that they'll give you, but those are limited. So anyways, I'm rambling here.
That's kind of been the problem with energy code. At some point, you hit diminishing returns. And
Correct.
I think we've blown that. Sounds
So then,
like-
yeah,
Well, the problem is the cost to get that extra savings compared to previous costs to
Yeah,
come
you're
down to
getting-
where we're at
You're
is.
getting diminishing return.
And
really
like-
tough diminishing.
and similar to lead, you're asking now builders, or you're asking owners to purchase points to just get to code minimum. So lead, we go through this when we do lead projects, right? You could buy this to get so many more points. And which is now what you're doing for the energy code. You're forcing them to buy points so they can get it, whether it's additional wall insulation, additional roof insulation, better windows, or could be it could be, you know, doing a higher efficiency mechanical really doesn't give you a whole lot extra points. So it's weird. It is just a weird setup the way it's how they got it.
Comments? Is everybody overwhelmed?
Typically, what you see is in the milder climates, it's much easier to get there
Right.
than our arid climates with the requirements for the air conditioning side and so forth. So, you know, it's one of those things that if you're on the coast, California or Washington coast, it's pretty easy to get there. Cause it's much easier, cause you don't have, the air conditioning is not nearly as large as far as that goes, and, you know, you can upgrade that much easier when it's much smaller equipment.
Right. And well, and some of the credits are not available, like you said, because of our region. And so, for instance, we get no credit for high efficiency heating. So you go to sealed, you know, you go to from 80% to in the 90% something for heating, and you get 0 credit. So then you want to do the energy model, but that the owner has to pay for to provide an energy model, you know, to if you want to try to get there. But then even with that energy model, it's challenging
And you shouldn't get much credit with an energy model for heating.
for heat,
And
right?
it's cooling, yeah.
Right. But you're just scrapping for anything you can get to those points.
Well, it's the one problem I had with lead is you could, like you said, buy points that
Right.
then contribute to the efficiency of the building.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're tending that direction with the new
Very much so.
energy code.
Yep.
So are you recommending that we go to the 21 code?
I would think if we can't get a handle on this 24, which right now I can't figure it out how to get it to go to work. I was just taking a typical B occupancy. I was doing 6,000 square feet because that bumps you up into the renewable credits. And I just was not, Dennis and I tried going through it a little bit, and we just couldn't seem to get it to work. And it was primarily because of the what it was limiting you as far as credits for renewable energy and load management. But we weren't doing load management because trying to get somebody who decides to build a little 6,000 square foot office building to do load management is, I think that's excessive. You know, if it's a 100,000 square foot building, sure. you know, even 50,000, a big office building, I could see doing something like that, but a little 6,000 square foot building where you put in load management would be, controls would be just a challenge. I don't know, I guess I'm looking for help on this. Anyway, I mean, has that recce have they come up with anything on this, or they, I mean, I know this is all new to everybody, because the code was only published a few months ago. So everybody's kind of scrambling to try to figure it out.
Correct, yeah, so this is Clayton. Sorry for being late. I was actually on a recce call this morning with Quest. So so the recce team is not focused on analyzing the 2024 IECC. That's not the task of the group. So we can certainly engage other folks as need be, but we don't have advice coming from the recce project specifically towards the 24. If you did decide to recommend the 21 in lieu of the 24, I think that is possible. The values in the prescriptive tables, I would definitely recommend updating simply because the cost associated with trying to get R49 in the ceiling of houses, it requires a raised heel truss or some other structural design, which is one of the main drivers for why those sections were appealed to the ICC and they dropped them back down. So using the values that are in the tables in the 24 would be my recommendation, simply because they have gone through an extensive process to determine those values at this point.
Oh, could make a motion for that effect?
Are we ready to do that, or?
Yeah, or do we
more
want,
study
do
and
we,
more
I think we need more
discussion?
study and more
Well,
discussion. yeah.
Well, the decision is to go to the 21. If that's the decision, then we have to go back and review the 21.
I haven't studied the
No, I don't
21
think
enough
anybody's-
to recommend to even go there.
But
I
I think
just
the decision
glanced
is,
at
do we go back and just review the 21 energy code for adoption?
My first this is Ken, my first recommendation would be to find out what other jurisdictions are doing. Because it is, maybe there is, I mean, it is written, it is a very complex section. And so maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm misreading something. And so, you know, that's why I reached out to Quest Energy, because they're the ones that also have to kind of do these energy models. They do these energy models all the time. But it sounded like to me from talking to him that that he didn't see anything that I was missing either. So I think what my first recommendation is let's check with maybe City of Phoenix, and maybe a few other jurisdictions to see how are they proceeding with this. And if they reviewed it and come up with something that I'm just missing.
So Ken, this is Dan. So specifically, your concern is chapter 4 and
Well, section 406.
or 406.
Yeah.
And 7 and 9, or just 406?
Well, 407 then references you back to 406 is what so I thought maybe we're just gonna do energy simulations and get away from all this. But 407 does require you to look at 406, and it does have requirements in there. So I don't think, I think so 406, 407, and 409 is related to 406 because that's the calculation procedure for HVAC total system performance ratio that had that extra points in there. And that by itself was, you know, several dozen pages.
And then Dennis, your concerns is with 405.
Not so much 405. No, I'm with Ken in that it's the requirement for additional beyond what's in
What's in
the
for
earlier parts up through 405. Although there are significant things electrically in 405. And perhaps the one with the biggest cost impact on most projects is the requirement to do renewable energy or pay for off-site renewable energy. You know, given the feedback that we all hear, everything is, you know, increasing costs, you know, can we bear that burden? On the other hand, a little bit I've read into what ICC is trying to do is essentially move that by the time they get to the 2030 code, all buildings will be net zero. Well, you don't get to net zero unless you take big steps to get there. But there are really, really big costs to do so.
I think ICC has made a change on that approach, but ASHRAE is not. ASHRAE still says they're gonna be zero by 2030, not with their 90.1 standard.
Yeah,
ICC
that's
is not
another
going
option.
down that path right now.
I have not reviewed 90.1 to see if that's another alternative.
It is, but there's complexity there too. They don't
Right.
have that table though.
Right,
C406.
right.
In the Northwest, they're also doing the HVAC total system performance. That is complex. There's a training online. I can send that to you, Dan and Clayton. I think PNNL did it, maybe Washington State, but I'll reach out to see what can happen to provide some education here to the committee.
Yeah, I mean, just to let you know, I mean, like I said, I could easily be missing something. So section 406 is 30 pages.
It is.
Section 409 is, which is the calculation, which is attached, really part of 406 is an additional 15 pages. And so, I mean, it's a lot
And
to
it
go
is
through.
hard reading.
It is really, because it refers you back and
Everything
forth.
is just back and forth everywhere.
And so it.
Saying you don't have enough fingers.
Exactly. And if you're trying to do it, you know, I have to make photocopies of it so I could have it go back and forth pretty easy without having to, and have it also open on a screen. So it's, yeah, it is challenging. It is a challenge.
So what's Pima County's view on this 2024 energy code? Dan?
Well, I agree, it's much more complicated. The point systems definitely make it difficult. I was worried about that when I first looked at it. I'll be honest, I haven't looked as deeply into it as you guys have. But that was a concern. The residential portions, I took a training with Darren Washak, is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the IRC one is, you know, it needs 10 points. So it's a lot like the 2021, and those 10 points are doable points. And so you can get there pretty quick.
It's the commercial ones.
What if, this is Clayton, just throwing an idea out there, what if the point threshold for commercial buildings was lowered to essentially reduce the quantity of points required?
Right, that's what we were talking about. So we were talking about either allowing the credit for renewable to be greater, if that's the direction you want to go, or the total can be reduced, or the points per item can be increased. Any of those would work, to make it at least more easily obtainable.
Reasonably attainable.
Reasonably, thank you, yeah.
I would suggest it'd be easier to reduce the points, like Clayton said, instead of trying to figure out what values you would have put in.
Correct, yeah.
That's a model.
It is,
To try to do,
yeah.
take your total
But
value
really,
number and bring it down.
And maybe it's just a blanket number rather than, I mean, this point per occupancy type, it's just all over, so it just gets challenged. That is hard. And then they have,
Took them months and months to do that, I know.
oh,
Cause I
yeah,
worked on that on the residential side too. I was listening to that thinking, this is crazy, but
yeah,
it was a different committee than I was on, but
and
anyway,
this, you know,
it
you
was
get,
time.
The required points go up to 86 points for, residential and multifamily.
right,
As low as 33 points, just for all other, I don't know what others are.
yeah,
But,
they pretty much list all of the, occupancy types.
yeah.
Yeah, and the credits, and they, like I said, they're limiting the carryover of renewable energy credits. You have to meet a certain renewable and load management credits. You have to meet a certain requirement, but they limit the carryover for credits on that to some small number. So it's just,
Has there been any amendments published to the 2024?
Not that I've seen. I know of 4 jurisdictions in Arizona that have adopted the 21. And a few are reviewing the 24. But I don't know of any jurisdictions in Arizona anyway that have adopted the 24. IECC.
I know, Southern Nevada is working on their adoption now. They've kept 406 in. They do a lot of performance and a lot of 90.1 as a pathway in Southern Nevada for larger buildings. They did take the renewable energy and they did for the on-site renewable, and they said where required, just added those words to the front, because right now it says buildings shall be provided with on-site renewable energy. So where required, buildings shall be, so it's not mandatory by adding that. That's what they did in southern, so Clark County and all the communities, Clark County area. And they're doing the same thing in the Reno and Washoe County area up there. That's what I know that they've done. But Reno, I think, is also keeping 406 in. Although they do much more prescriptive in northern Nevada than southern.
I don't know if this has any bearing on code adoption of the renewable energy requirements, like say solar power in a building, but right now, one of the big driving forces is all of the various tax credits that you can get, and the fact that it helps on your utility cost because of the buyback of excess energy that utilities will have. But what's happening in the solar business is that there's real fear that those things are going to go away. It appears that the Trump administration is not particularly favorable to the tax credit. They definitely want to put more tariffs on imported equipment, and so much of it is imported right now, not always from China, because that already has a significant tariff on it. But all these things are going to make the solar energy much more expensive, and at the same time, the old net metering rules on the utility interconnection, which was a great deal for someone to get solar because they could sell excess power in the day to the utility at full retail rate and use it back in the evening and essentially drive people's bill down to next to nothing. Those rules are all gone. And now the utility buys power from you at a wholesale rate. They don't carry excess energy and reconcile once a year. That you're essentially reconciled every single day you're using energy. So if you put a big system in, you overproduce, you're giving the power away to the utility company. And then if you use energy when the sun's not shining, you're still paying pretty hefty energy rates. So the economic incentives just are not there by themselves, but now we're going to have a requirement to put it in a building. So it's economically, it's a big cost to add that to a product.
not sure you can be at zero in this climate without a new. I don't know if that's possible.
This is Dan. This is just another thought based on what we're talking about. I don't know if this would be possible or not, but maybe we delete the commercial sections out of the 2024, refer to the 2021, and then keep the residential portions to align with the IRC in the 2024. I don't know if that's possible or I think I was just thinking outside the box here.
I guess anything's possible, but
Yeah.
does it kind of complicate it for someone trying to use it?
I don't know. Residential is one, commercial is the other. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just throwing out ideas.
I understand. So it sounds like we need to check with some other jurisdictions and see where they're at with.
That's my thought, because like I said, I could be totally missing something here. I could be calculating it incorrectly. I mean, Dennis and I kind of went through it, but it's a lot to
We're
go
both
through.
time limited though with
Right.
our normal jobs.
Right.
Is the problem.
And when you're trying to go through 45 pages of it, I mean, that's a code book by itself. I mean, just those sections are as thick as the entire IMC. So,
Well, this used to be thinner.
it used to be a pamphlet. It used to be, and not that long
The
ago.
model image.
Yeah, the 2006 was, what, about 10 pages, maybe?
All of them used to be much thinner.
Right, and then all of a sudden this comes out and it's thicker than, it's no longer life safety at all. That's the challenge. This is no longer life safety. This is huge burdens, I think, on people wanting to build buildings. So.
So I guess we need a motion to table this, to study other jurisdictions.
And to learn more about it. Yeah.
Don't know that you need a motion for that.
Okay.
But we will definitely keep it on the agenda moving forward.
I think we should include, reviewing the 2021 code as well. To see how that would, be more feasible, if it would be more feasible and if it would achieve anything reasonable in terms of energy efficiency.
Well, one of the problems I have, especially with the energy code, is when you skip a code cycle, you're making a huge jump in requirements.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 21 might make some sense, just to transition to the 24. But that means we're reviewing 2 code books for energy. And we know you have.
Or we're looking
Looking
at,
like a true engineer.
right.
All in the
So,
math.
so I think, I don't know if they have some seminars already on 2024, so maybe we try to get involved with that, but just to try to figure out how to get a simple building to pass.
We need to talk to the code committee that wrote this 24 version. I'm curious, was there anybody from this region on that committee?
I can't answer that.
You know, Jim, I know you were involved.
Yeah, I was on the residential, not on residential. I don't know. But I know the chair was in Seattle on the commercial committee.
Well, Seattle's much easier than Tucson.
But I could reach out to him.
Yeah.
And I could take a look to see what kind of
Because some of the
training
stuff,
education's out there.
some of the information, like I said, on bigger buildings, I could see getting to that, but on smaller buildings, where we just have, simple package units or split systems, or, we don't have a lot of roof area and things like that, for renewables.
Between the basic requirements and then the additional, I mean, the increments seem to be 2,000 square foot and smaller. And 5,000
5,000,
square foot, and then there are some requirements that hit at 10,000 square foot.
Right.
So all those are, relatively small buildings still.
Yeah.
Although that's probably, as a number of projects you all see, that's probably a good percentage of them. But, big buildings can absorb some of the costs of these. On small buildings, some of these systems become proportionately much more expensive.
And it does make it so that, if we have an architect, structural, mechanical, electrical, and different firms, somebody needs to be managed, somebody needs to be, and so.
Or another category, a
Or
specialized
you-
consultant.
Or you hire a specialized consultant to then
Sounds like.
put this together. It's exactly like.
Do we know of any such consultant in town, and do they even have the capability of
Right.
doing that? I don't have the capability of hiring people that do it. I can't find them
Right.
anywhere.
Now, the people that have the all A&E in one shop, it's probably easier for them.
But my experience is those shops are getting more well coordinated than
Right.
separate shops. They're just not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But we need someone to take charge, that, it requires
Well,
more of a team approach than even have now.
which makes sense if you got a 50,000 square foot office building. You could spend a small portion of resources to deal with that, but when you got a 5,000 square foot building, it's a huge proportion
Right.
of your energy going into them. That's why you don't see 5,000 LEED certified buildings.
Right.
This is too onerous a process for that small project.
I have a question. Is this even a code that's required to be adopted?
No.
I mean, is it
Several
mandated code? Is it?
So there's several jurisdictions that don't adopt the energy codes. So whether you want to go down that path.
I don't think that's possible for us to eliminate, given our council and. board
Right,
code.
I think that would-
Decision on
that'd be hard.
sustainability.
It's already been established.
Right.
We just need to have something that's reasonable and. Yeah, it's gonna kill the small. Somebody wants to build a 5,000 square foot doctor's office.
Yeah.
It's gonna double and triple the fees. to Get through this process.
Yeah, the fees, just like in LEED, our fee for LEED is a lot of times more than our fee to design the building. And so now our fee to do the energy, meet the energy code might be higher than our fee to design the building. That's why I'm seeing this so far. So,
Table this and. Wait, you're gonna check with what, Phoenix?
I will check with Phoenix, and throughout the country, for potential amendments, that have already been established. Perhaps, another jurisdiction has also lowered the point value. We'll look into that. I would still recommend, pursuing the 24, simply because, again, skipping years are not going to make the next adoption any easier. But, if the cost to meet the code for smaller buildings is too exorbitant, then I think, it is our responsibility to at least assess what it would look like, to make compliance a little easier. The upside with a point value system like this is those values can be changed.
Just to add to that, in terms of points, the thing that I can't figure out is the whole idea of a point system was that you could make a decision whether you want to spend more money on an envelope or glazing or mechanical equipment or electrical equipment, but you wouldn't necessarily have to do everything. And I really see that it's like you've got to do everything, and even that won't be enough. So that's why there's got to be some fundamental flaw in it, unless I'm not understanding it, right? And I think that's where Ken's at.
Well, that makes sense. Different buildings, configurations, orientations, something might be more effective than something else. But if you have to do everything, what's the point system?
Yeah, then it's just required.
Right. Okay. You're awfully quiet, Fred.
I'm
Overwhelmed.
sorry, Ken, I'm sorry, Dennis.
This is making the vapor barrier look pretty good.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
Well, is there any more discussion on this item? I think Clayton's got his marching orders. Next meeting, which will be, I assume, January.
Correct.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to, I could talk to, somebody, I could talk to Robert in my office, see if he can attend in my absence.
Okay.
As a, just a.
Technical advisor.
A technical advisor, right.
Okay. Well, I doubt we're gonna get to the point where we vote on adoption.
I doubt it too.
January. Well, what's our schedule for adoption and?
We would like to take a package to mayor and council around March, maybe April, with a recommendation, to still give, Pima County time to, follow suit, because the city of Tucson needs to go first and Pima County can follow.
So I go to planning and zoning commission the same time Clayton's going to mayor and council and then all the way up to the board of supervisors. After Clayton.
Council's never not approved. Matter of time going through the process.
Mhm.
So that, you're talking June, when it would be.
July 1 is our target implementation date to align with the fiscal year.
Okay, and you prefer to have the entire package
Yep, exactly.
rather than going through and including the energy.
Yeah.
Which the mayor and council may have some concern with, for their sustainability agenda. Same with the county.
Same with county. Yes.
Okay. We're done with item 6, we'll move on to item 7, call from the audience. Couple people online. Here's your chance.
One item I would like to throw out is that we may need a future agenda item for the appointment of the chair.
Okay.
Just as a refresher, right? We need to take a look at who's the chair and the vice chair. Yeah. So January would make sense for that agenda item if you so choose.
Put that one on the agenda for January. Hearing nothing from the audience,
Nope, no one's chatted in.
just chimed in. Pretty depressing last discussions. Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Can I motion to adjourn?
Second,
I'll second it, yes.
all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no.
Any opposition?
No opposition. This meeting is adjourned at 10:35.